Good morning. Today we're going to be talking about how we can actually set up and work with Eclipse for the first time and do some really quick introductions of how to make a project with Eclipse for Java and go from there. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open up Eclipse. Since I'm going to do command space in Eclipse, if you're on a Windows box, you want to go to your Programs menu and find Eclipse inside there. When we're doing this, we want to make sure we find the workspace for the first time. So I recommend that you set aside a space specifically for making all your Java projects. As you can see right here over on my Documents folder, I have a folder called Dev, and I can see a folder for databases, Java, and Swift. So I can keep all my projects together in one single space for the language or whatever I'm working with. I find it's really helpful to have it all organized and make it so it's really easy to work with and find that out. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that as the workspace I'm working with, so user/Cody Henriksen, where I am. And then my Documents folder, again, Dev, and then Java, so I can start off with that. And I'll go ahead and click on Launch. And as you can see right there, I just made a quick little subfolder for metadata for the project itself. We'll cover that another time. It's a hidden folder, so you don't even need to really worry about that. Right now we have our Java Eclipse IDE, so let's pull that up and see what we have. This is the welcome screen. We're never going to use this again. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead and take the checkbox out of that so we never show it again at startup, and then close this window. This brings us the default perspective for working for Java code, and we're going to do a couple of just quick little setups here. The first thing we want to do is we want to close the task list and outline sections. We'll never be using those in class, and so we want to just get them out of the way. This leaves us with the three areas we'll be using most of the time in class. This first section right here, this big empty space, is the editor area. This is where all of our code editing is going to happen. This is where our work's going to be doing. The next bottom section is where we see our problems. So if we have any errors, they'll show up down here. This is also where our console by default is going to show up. And so when we interact with the console, all that's going to be down here in that bottom section. Over here on the left is the project space. This is the package explorer. This is where we're going to be seeing all of our projects listed in a hierarchical system, so we can see how the structure of everything works, and so we can see all of our pieces and what we're working with. Right now there's nothing in here, but it's right there so we can get access to it. Now, a couple things. In case we accidentally close the wrong window, say you close a window, you need to get it back and you don't know where it came from, the easiest way to get back to it is you're going to go up here into the window menu. We go down to the perspective section and we choose reset perspective, and it'll bring it back to the default perspective for Java, which again we can go ahead and then close the task list and close the outline sections, and we have it all right there. So just in case we close anything accidentally, we can come back to that and have that ready. The first thing we do is we need to make a Java project. So you can either click on the link right here, go up here to File, New, and choose Java Project, or we can even right-click on this and go to New and Java Project as well. So we have that right there. We can get through that. We'll go ahead and click on the link for it to create a Java project. When we're making a Java project name, our name needs to make sure that we have some basic spelling rules on this. That means it starts with a capital letter and there's no spaces, so we can identify it's clearly a project and where it's easy and right there for us. And so we'll just go first simple project. When we're talking about the JRE, or the Java Runtime Environment, this is where the Java program runs, and we're going to use as a default the Java 1.8. We can use Java 1.5. That'll cover 90% of what we're doing in class. But I recommend not using anything above 1.8 because if you do so, you have to delete some files to make sure it runs properly. So 1.8 is what we're going to be using for class 95% of the time. On project layout, we want to make sure we have a separate folder for the class and source files. It's the default system that we're going to be using, but make sure it's set for that by anyway, just in case. We don't need to worry about the next button because there's nothing that we'll be changing inside the project settings when we start a project in the first place. We just go ahead and click Finish. Now we have right now our first simple project. If we click the triangle right here, you'll see we have the link for the Java System Library. If somehow you don't have Java installed, which you shouldn't be able to get at this point, you might have an error with that right there. And we definitely have a source folder right here. This is where the code is going to go. I'm going to go back to my browser window right here for my applications, and you can see inside my first simple project, I have a bin folder and a source folder. The bin folder is not going to show up over here because the bin folder is the binary files where all the compiled code goes, and we'll talk about what that is and what's involved with that as we go along, but it's never going to show up in the actual code execution environment, so we don't need to worry about that. And if we click on the source files triangle, the source folders triangle, excuse me, you can see nothing's inside it because we haven't made anything yet. So now we've made our project. Let's go ahead and add that project to GitHub since that's a process we'll be using all year long, and we'll make sure we're comfortable with it. So again, we'll just go ahead to GitHub, switch the application, go to File and a new repository. And just like in Swift, when we're making a repository, the same basic rules apply. The repository name will match exactly the project name. So you choose that right here, so first simple project. And then for a local path, it's going to be, so it matches the project where the is saved as well. So when we're doing our Swift project, it was inside the dev/Swift folder. Since we're in the Java projects, it's going to be a dev/Java folder. And again, we can click on the choose file, making sure that that root folder is at the top of this. Do not ever select this project. Make sure you have it just right there. So we'll go ahead and hit cancel since we don't need to make any changes to that. So we have that right there. Click create repository. Again, just like in Swift, we want to make sure we undo that commit, and we want to add in a repository setting so we can add the ignored files for that. So go up to repository, go to repository settings, choose the ignored files. It's the same for we've been using in Swift as well. So we do bin/ to start, then */ class to any class files, *xc user state. We won't have those in any Java project, but that's okay. And finally, .ds _ store. The Mac file we won't be using at all. So we hit those and save. We add that to the repository, give it a quick think of made a project and added an ignore file. We choose the commit to master and publish that repository. Get that on the internet by default, again keeping it private as our default setting as well. Hit publish. It pushes that up to the internet. We have a backup copy now we can access anywhere we need to. Now, once we've done that, we're going to go ahead and go into our Java project itself and get that started. So everything is going to go inside the source folder. That's where all of our code is going to reside. It lives inside the source folder, or SRC. And so we're going to put our structure for that. In Eclipse, when we're in Java, we have to build our structures ourselves as well. It doesn't have a preset of files when we create a project like we do when we're making a project inside Swift. So we need to make our structures for that. The first thing we're going to do is make a package. A package is the way Java organizes its files and structures inside it. So make a package inside the source folder. And we go ahead and right-click on New. And the first one on there is Package. So we do that. The naming convention for packages is the first part of the package name describes what the project is working on, and the second part of the package name describes which part of the project it is. So in this case, it'll be first, dot, and then controller. Because the first is referring to the fact that it's our first project, and controller, because we're using the model view controller architecture as we build all of our projects, this is going to be in the controller section, so we make sure that's in right there. So first.controller is where that goes. We don't need to make a package info.java, so never put a checkbox on that. And go ahead and click Finish. And as you can see, we have this cute little empty white box right here. There's nothing inside it. If I go look inside at Finder or my Explorer window, I can click on that and I see a first folder, and inside that first folder there's a controller folder, because a package is really just a folder navigation system we can use so we can see what's inside our project itself. And so we can see right there we have our first project. Inside the first project there's the bin folder, then there's the source folder, inside the source folder is the first folder, and then the controller folder. And so we have that right there. The first thing we do inside our controller folder is we're going to make our runner. The runner is the file that runs a Java project. It makes it as simple as possible. So we right click and go to New and then Class. And we call it Runner. So by default right now I have a runner class. It has a package first.controller, so makes it say where the file itself resides. The package statement is the first line of every Java project, and that just tells the Java compiler where it is, so it knows what it is. Then we have our keyword public class, and public tells us that everyone can see it, it's visible to everybody. Class tells us that it is a class, and finally its name is runner. And right now I can simply compile this. It does nothing. It's a compiled file that can't do anything. So in order to make it do something, we have to add a main method. The main method is the entry point for a Java program, and so we're going to add that really fast. And so main method will look like this. We're not going to explain it, we're just going to write it. It starts with public static void main, and then parens, and inside the parens we do string square brackets args, and followed by a set of squigs. Now if I have this right here, I now have a compilable piece of code that can run. My project will run all on its own. I click the play button up here in the top left to run it. And if I go to my window and show view and console, we see down here that that project terminated. It ran, it did nothing because there's nothing inside the main. The main method simply is what starts the project. So we've got our quick little runner. It doesn't do very much, but it gets us up and going. And so we have that right there. The next step we have to do is we have to actually farm out some work so we can have something the runner can tell what to do. So we're going to make a new file inside the same package. So I'm going to make a controller file. So it's new and then class inside the first.controller, and this one's the controller file, and I'm going to call it app controller. You'll make a controller for every single project we make in class, and it's just going to have a name usually reflecting what it's working with, and then controller, so we know it's the controller file, and we hit finish. Again, we have our package as the first line of code for every single file in Java, which tells the Java compiler where the file itself is located. It's then public class and then its name, in this case it's app controller. The app controller is always going to have, or a controller file, whichever its name is always going to have at least one method, the start method, where we're going to start off our project. And so our project will start with public void start. It has no parameters and just set of squigs. And this is where we can make something happen. We'll just do a quick print statement so we can see how the flow of execution happens and then go from there. To print in Java, we use system.out.println. And then we pass it inside the parameters for that in a value that we want, usually within quotes for a string, so we can have that value out there. And I made a Java project. So I made a Java project, exclamation point. We have something right here. This method right here, start, exists inside the controller class, the app controller class. And right now, if I run my project, nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to be displayed because I've never called that method. So we have to make it so that our app controller can have that method start called. So we're going to go back to our runner. And this runner is how all of our runner files will always look all year long because every project is going to start the exact same way. So the first thing we do is we make an instance of our app controller. So I say app controller. And then I name that instance. I'm going to call app because it's really easy. I'm going to call its constructor as well. So equals a new app controller, followed by semicolons, and then app.start. I'm going to tell it to call the start method inside that. And so if we take a look at that right here, we have our public static void main string square bracket args. Inside that, I'm saying app controller app is a new app controller and telling it to app.start. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. I'm going to run this new version of the program. And now I said I made a Java project. So that method right here inside the controller class has been called inside the runner. And so this is how these sequence events are always going to happen to start off all our projects. We'll make a runner, we'll make our controller, we'll start the runner so it calls the controller start method, and then we go from there. But this is the quick little basic thing to get that up and going and have that work. Again, since we made some changes, we want to, of course, go to GitHub. We have those new changes right there and added a controller file and made the runner. Hit commit to master, push that to origin. It's up on the internet. We can access that as well. So again, just a quick review. What we have right there, the first line of every Java file is going to be a package statement that tells Java where that file resides, the structure that goes along with it. A runner is the class we use to start every single project in Java. We'll have exactly one runner per project. The runner is going to look exactly the same. It's always going to start with public static void main. That's the signature or the header of the method that we'll be using. The contents of that method will always look like this for class. We can make it simple so you don't have to troubleshoot it later on. And so it'll be the name of the controller we're working with, give it a name like say app, assign it a value of a new constructor instance, and then tell that app to start. Our start method will always be public void start. It'll exist inside our controller. We can do a lot more than simply just do a simple print statement, but we'll go over that more as we go along. But that's a quick little introduction of how you can make a quick Java project, have it get up and going, and work with it from there. Thanks again. Have a great day.